How's it going, Reef Keepers? Hope your week is going well. This is another one of these kind of short, long form videos, I guess. They're not like, full on podcast length episode things or anything like that. These are way more low budget than that. I don't even own like a microphone. So this is just, again, me with my phone on my tank, ranting at you. So I'll try not to get too ranty. I got to kind of keep my head to get through what I want to talk about today, because it's a bit more complex than the topics I've covered in these, state of the hobby bits before this. But this one, this, I guess, topic or whatnot is a bit more specific than what I got into last time. Last time I kind of talked about just like, big picture, like corporate commercial mentality in the hobby, and how it's impacting like social media and stuff like that, influencers, how those influencers are impacting reefers, etc. But microcosm, not really a microcosm. It's not small enough to be a microcosm. A major part of the landscape of influencers and of just the general population of reefers. There's a major contingent of people that, interestingly to me, seem very, very resistant to believing that like Aperture, Bulk Reef Supply, EcoTech, these big brands, many of the big brands that have unified together under the Aperture umbrella, are in any way working against them. And I think a large part of that is due to the fact that Bulk Reef Supply is kind of the standard bearer for this group, and they, as I mentioned in my last bit about this stuff, they exude this kind of, former city on the hill, and to many people, they remain the shining city on a hill within the hobby, and they work at that. I truly believe they work to uphold that image, and they've still got, Aperture still has Ryan Batchelor as the man holding that standard out in front. And because Ryan is so, earnest and, such a passionate reef keeper and such a driver was such a driver in the industry, and I guess remains so, I think that there's a lot of, I'm trying to say this the right way, I think there's a lot of bean counters that are hiding behind Ryan and sort of moving him around like a shield. And it's not that Ryan's taking the flack or anything like that. It's more of a hiding mechanism. Like, there are things going on behind the shroud that the magnitude that Ryan brings is able to, effectively block. So that's not to take anything away from him. The guy, works hard, and I genuinely believe he cares. I do. But ultimately, Bulk Reef Supply took the money when the venture capitalists came calling, and he was part of that. And I'm not blaming anyone for taking the money. I can't say that I would have stood there and been like, no, I'm not going to take the money. But I have the advantage of not being in that situation to take money like that, and probably never will. And so here I can sit comfortably and, from my pulpit, pick things apart. But I'm going to forge ahead anyway. I just want to get that out of the way. I understand that, I understand that I'm in no position. I'm in no position to, call morality shots on anybody. Again, these are my opinions, my thoughts, things that I'm seeing that I think need to be talked about, and I think are not talked about. They are talked about, but I don't know that they're talked about through the right channels, or through all the channels, rather. So, for instance, this stuff gets argued about, very passionately on Reef to Reef. And if you call out anything to do with Aperture BRS, if you maybe level a criticism at like the new 52 weeks of reefing, for example, for having every tank being, loaded down with the most expensive gear, the most overbuilt tanks that you've ever seen in the hobby. If you take a critical eye to that and voice that on Reef to Reef, for example, and say, hey, it's a very big departure from 52 weeks of reefing season 1. There's an obvious like overbuild mentality that went into these tanks to very, in your face, over the top, expose you to much of the most expensive gear in the hobby and the most expensive tank brands, etc. And I think that, for reefers coming into the hobby, or even like reefers who are really getting into it and starting to find their legs and haven't thought everything through or can't gain the perspective they need to have before they make big purchases, it's again one of the things that really is bothering me on a daily basis about where the hobby's headed commercially, is that it's this quiet drumbeat of you need it all, you need it all, you need it all. And it's a subconscious, unstated thing. But like 52 weeks of reefing season 2, in my opinion, it's not what season 1 was at all. Season 1 was like hard facts, hard knowledge about what we knew about how gear worked, what gear did, how you needed to utilize it, what you could expect, challenges that you may face, etc. And I'm not saying 52 weeks season 2 won't eventually get there. It's ongoing. I can't render a judgment on it yet. But just from the outset, them introducing all the series of tanks, I stopped watching it. It's just like, to me, it's an infomercial that's pretending not to be an infomercial. And I understand, I've seen little snippets that I think they are getting into more of the nitty gritty now. So I don't know that, I don't think it'll all be that way, but it doesn't change the fact that every week, week in, week out, they're showcasing tanks and gear on tanks and, livestock in tanks, etc., that is outfitted with all of the things that they sell, and mostly the highest end stuff. And that adds to that drumbeat that I mentioned earlier. And I kind of look at myself as a good example for who I think they're targeting with all this, with this concerted effort. So I don't know how many of you are parents, but there's this effect, or this, this thing you notice with kids where from the time they can talk, up through into age 5 or so, if you just walk up to your kid and you say, hey, toddler, where do you live? They look at you, if they even know how to respond to that at all, they look at you and they could just say, I live on the moon. And to that child, they live on the moon. They might as well. They are not, deep conscious of anything yet, right? And not anything, but they're not deep conscious of they can't place themselves in perspective at all. And then a time comes when they turn 5, 6, something like that, where all of a sudden you ask your kid where they live and they're like, oh, I live Chicago. And it's like, oh, so we've turned a corner here. And, something's happened where, this is a changed being. And I feel like reefers go through this. So when you start in the hobby, it is so much noise that it is very difficult to gain any form of perspective consciousness on what the heck is going on, of what up and down is, where left and right are, what you actually need, what you don't need, what's too much, what's too little, what's what are snake oil solves for things versus patience and just tried and true methodology. you don't know. There's, every time you go to the forums, every time you go on Facebook and you ask a question, there's so many things coming at you from every angle. And every time you look to the BRS City on a Hill for an answer, in the modern era, I would venture to say that the answer, even if a legitimate answer is given, it's given while they're showing you that answer on a tank that is so grossly overbuilt that subconsciously you can't help but think, does this answer even apply to me? Does it even apply to me because I don't have all that stuff yet? Do I need to buy that stuff for this answer to apply to me, for me to fix this problem? They're trying to help me and telling me an answer, but is it even applicable? I don't have $1,000 lights. I don't have $500 power heads. I don't have an Apex system. Does this apply to me? So around year 5 of reefing for me was when I felt like I had finally, and I didn't know it at the time, I look back now and I realized I started to do this, but I began to gain a certain level of deeper consciousness, right? I started to take an objective look at what all I had accumulated, what all I was running, what the alternatives were. I started listening, certain voices in the hobby began to kind of float up above the, chaos below. And I started to tune out the chaos and tune in to a few specific voices that I felt were much more genuine than the roiling mass of screaming wannabe Thomases, to use my own word, my own term. And that sense of consciousness has increased, in this whole, for really the last year or two. And I feel now like I'm in a unique position. I'm only 6 years into this hobby, but I'm now at a point where I have enough experience and I've kind of sorted my way through the noise to the point where I can take an objective look at things from a standpoint of someone who was not around for the deep history of the hobby. So I've only known this part of the hobby that has basically been, commercialized reefing on steroids, right? That all began, and started to gain traction, I think, around the time. I mean, I'm sure it was gaining traction before, but it really it has seemed to ramp up exponentially since I've been in the hobby. And we're now at a point where it's a lot of what I talked about, last time I did one of these. We're at a point of rampancy almost. It is like froth at the mouth, game on, full court press, all, wannabe Thomas influencers combined with, the Aperture machine and, every other entity trying to make a quick buck or make a few extra dollars by, adding some kind of arbitrary, blockade for you, where you have to buy one product to make another one work, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'm watching all this happen from my vantage point, and I think that right now, Aperture is targeting the me's, so to speak, or the people who have not quite entered this level of experience, but they've got some experience under their belt. Of course, there's always that drumbeat again for new blood in the hobby, and they've got an army of social media influencers that they have doing their bidding. Those guys are at their beck and call, and they've got them. I mean, they have got them. And so they're doing a lot of the work for Aperture. And that all, was a fantastic, grassroots marketing effort on their part, combined with just, kind of the algorithm helping generate all this want for all these, people to want to, do this kind of product style to a lot of their videos. But I think that they are targeting people with money, the new generation of reefers, and you can see when you look at my tank, I'm sitting here and I'm about to talk about, some pretty interesting stuff to do with, what's happened and what the Aperture effect has been in terms of dollars, cents, arbitrary barriers that they've put up to increase revenue. And look at my tank. I'm a showcase for these guys. I've got G6 XR15 Pros lined up across my tank. I've got Neros on here. I had EcoTech MP40s or MP10s before this, before I upgraded my tank. I've got a full Apex system with EB832s and an EB8 because I just wanted to add some more plugs, etc., etc. I could go on. Trident, auto feeders. I mean, everywhere you look on my tank, I am a product of the aperture drumbeat. Like and I think many people who, if you've got the means to slowly save and accumulate this stuff over the first few years in the hobby, I mean, I literally have had like lists generated of all BRS aperture products, EcoTech products, AI products that I'm like, okay, I need to take this much out of every paycheck, and then this month I can get this, and then a few more months and I get this and that. I seriously, like, I had this like gamed out, and I achieved all of it that I wanted, and it was about that time that I started realizing, oh, I don't live on the moon. And all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, how much stuff that actually, like, the thing that matters most about this hobby could I have accumulated instead? Like, how many beautiful fish could I have bought? How many acros could I have by now? How many, instead of these little frags that I'm trying to get rolling, how many colonies could I have by now? Could I have like a bigger tank? Instead of running all this fancy gear, in and around the tank, could I just have a bigger tank and be able to do so much more with it, right? And that is a little bit torturous, from this standpoint. Now, I think people go two ways when they get to this point of deeper consciousness, this awakening, so to speak. They go either the me route, where they're like, oh my God, I've been had. Or they go the other route, which I would say is like at least 75% of people. And they go, I'm starting to suspect I've been had. But instead of like accepting that and changing, and it's not human nature to change, right? And I'm not demonizing these people. They're products of the crazy times and world and hobby we live in. But this huge contingent of reefers, when they get to that point, instead of, letting themselves understand truly with perspective what has happened to them, they go, no, I am going to now fanboy and defend all these companies, all this gear, every $100 bill that I threw down, probably needlessly, and I am gonna die on this hill. And I mean, everywhere you look, they are dying on that hill in droves to defend what all of this has become, which I think is what it's all become, is unhealthy. I really do. So I am in turn with this video. Not that these people are going to listen to this video. Heck, the last video I posted got some attention, and I feel like the people who paid attention to it, I'm incredibly grateful that they recognized what I'm talking about and recognized it as important. But I feel like those people, they're people who already have like reached this point of awakening and have begun to understand, where they stand in this, and like what what the true perspective is, and where they fit into it. The people I really want to reach are either new reefers, which the nature of these videos, because there's history of the hobby involved, and there's ideas and realities that they don't yet understand and have not witnessed. New reefers can't really understand these videos, so like that's kind of futile. But the group that I'm hoping a few of them might listen to this and go, okay, maybe I should take a harder look at this, are people like me now, or like people who were me, you know, pretty recently. You know, like me a couple years ago. So that's my target. My target's the same group that I think is the kind of the future money making, you know, core that Aperture, you know, is really going hard on right now. And I want to show that group a for instance in this of what's going on, like a hard and fast, this is really what's going on here. So here, this is my example, has to do with EcoTech, Mobius, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, the MXM module. People who know what I'm talking about already know what I'm talking about, and you can stay tuned and listen to it if you want to. But I found something pretty interesting. So again, forgive the cheapness of my setup here, but I literally have to hold this tablet in front of my camera and try not to knock my camera down. I literally have it like resting against a bottle of water right here. But so there's a thread that I found on Reef to Reef that has really kind of stuck with me the last couple of years after I found it. And it began, you know, around May 2021, okay? According to Reef Builders, like their article about Aperture acquiring EcoTech ran in April 2022. So this is like under a year, but, you know, closer to a year before the, you know, acquisition was really rolling full steam. So the original question of this Reef to Reef thread was, are we seriously gonna have EcoTech products that are not Wi-Fi capable? Like if I'm on vacation and, you know, the guy checking on my house says, hey, you know, the MP40 is making a crazy sound, you're telling me I can't just turn that off? Like I would need a controller to turn that off. Whereas before I could control things. With the launch of Mobius, I no longer can. Everything's turned to Bluetooth. So I skipped down pretty far in the thread, but this fella here, May 28th, 2021, says, I reached out to EcoTech today, and they activated the Wi-Fi for Mobius for me, which is really interesting. So this guy says, I sense this is about to become a popular thread. Like, yeah, definitely. So he goes on to say, I asked them via email if they could activate Wi-Fi on my Mobius and told them about my coral spawning experiment. You know, I'm sure they would do it for you if you reached out to them. I don't sense that happened for a lot of people. And by the way, this is this guy's claim. I'm assuming this guy understands what has gone on here, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. So he says, the kicker is that I believe you need to have a Radeon G5 for Wi-Fi connectivity and to bridge that connection to all the devices. So let's go to the next post that he made right here. So he actually shows the settings and says that he has this purple dot that appeared next to one of his G5 units that has the Wi-Fi connectivity and gives more details about, you know, how this all transpired and what's happening. So in the remainder of this thread, there are people who are like, you know, I've been reaching out to EcoTech for months, asking them when I can use my Versa with Wi-Fi, when I can use this with Wi-Fi, when, you know, and EcoTech purportedly, again, I'm taking these people at their word, continuously said, it's coming, it's coming, it's in development, it's in beta, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. I don't know when the talks with, you know, to combine forces and create this, you know, Aperture juggernaut began, but presumably not long after this, if they weren't already going on, right? So essentially, this thread, like, it just dies out with everyone, you know, waiting for this. They're waiting, and it never happens, right? To get into some other history about it, Neptune used to have a supported module called the WXM module. I never used the WXM, but it allowed you to connect EcoTech MP series pumps via your Apex. Now, they did away with that once Neptune started to come out with, you know, their wave units. because they were in direct competition, and there was no longer any benefit to generate this module. They were making more money selling power heads than they were selling that module, obviously, and they wanted to sell more power heads. And the draw was that connectivity to Apex, right? So why would you have a pump that many reefers consider superior, supported, that people would buy instead? So this connectivity thing is really fascinating because, first of all, I think it's important to be able to control your gear. If somebody at your house is like, hey, there's a major problem going on, you're away for a week or whatever, or you're just at the store, who cares? Can you, what do we do? And you're like, oh, don't worry. Let me whip out my phone and either, whatever it's plugged into, I can turn it off. Boom, turn that outlet off. Problem, crisis averted, So, when EcoTech ported over to Mobius and sent everything that was previously Wi-Fi capable over to Bluetooth, this presented a unique opportunity for Aperture. So Aperture, basically when Neptune discontinued the MXM, the reefing community was like, oh no, we want that back. Obviously, as consumers, that was awesome. We could use another company's superior pumps with the Neptune Apex system, and they would communicate and have a marriage, and everything was great. So basically, two things from there happened. One, I talked about it, Neptune discontinued the WXM module. Then EcoTech went over to Mobius and made everything across the board, with the exception, I think, of their G5 lights. They made everything Wi-Fi. So now we've got robust capitalist competition forcing companies apart. We hated it because we lost something, but we didn't know what we had, because that was at a point where they were still fighting for more market share. They were innovating. There was a healthy atmosphere of competition that was keeping prices, presumably more stable, and was, causing these companies to fight it out and make things better for all of us. And the American reefing, industry was hot. I mean, it was a hotbed of competition at that point. So Aperture looked at all this hotbed of innovation and success, and they said, these venture capitalists said, hey, we see something, that we can utilize here to pad an aspect of our portfolio in, the pet category, that we can unite all these things together and start adding artificial blockades that force people to buy gear. And here's how they did it. They, instead of allowing EcoTech to follow through and bring that Wi-Fi capability to bear, they said, oh no, no, why would we do that? Don't you want to make money? We do. Here's what we're going to do. We've got Neptune and EcoTech now. We've got BRS as the standard bearer. Perfect. Neptune, create a new module, the MXM module. That module is now required to use EcoTech gear with a Neptune Apex system. And they're like, okay, we can do that. All right, so we've just added a layer of just $110, $110, $110. Every time someone wants the basic capability to control a multi-$100 device from EcoTech via Wi-Fi, right? There's point one. Again, plenty of people know this already. They're like, this is, this isn't for you. This is for people who believe that, and who defend Aperture on a daily basis, right? I want to show them that it's not all good, okay? It's not all roses. So from there, they said, hey, this is perfect. So now this capability, this is a two-tier win. In order to get that MXM module, we're not going to make that MXM module something that you could buy and use without an Apex. No. You have to use it with an Apex head unit, right? So now, in order to get this capability, you not only have to buy a module, so they got everybody who was already existing with an Apex system and EcoTech products. Brilliant. They are the whole market share of that. Everybody who wanted that capability back that they loved, they now got to pay for it. So there, boom, we just, scraped this whole pile of cash. Now, let's go back and let's start drilling new incoming reefers or current reefers in the hobby that are just picking up steam in the hobby and are wanting these things. And let's push the apex to the ends of the earth, right? Let's push it for all it's worth. And now, to get this basic Wi-Fi capability, you're buying a multi-$100 Apex unit. You're buying a $110, $115, $120 MXM module that facilitates the connection. And then you're buying a multi-$100 EcoTech product that doesn't have a basic Wi-Fi capable chip. And I say that, and I think actually some of these products actually have a chip capable of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and they've turned off the Wi-Fi. Again, I don't understand this stuff on a depth level of technical guys like Telegram do. But from what I've read, there are some instances where this thing was just turned off. That capability could exist if they just turned it on, and it doesn't exist. So if I'm talking, out my rear end, I apologize on that one. But, basically you can see. So again, people like me a couple years ago or me now who are resisting understanding what is going on here, this is one example of this. It's a prominent example of it, but it's a very legitimate example of what's happening now that there's, borderline monopolistic behavior going on in what's a very niche market. So it was very easy to, snap all these little companies up that were, creating all these tremendous innovations and growing this hobby in meaningful ways. And now you can utilize all their various, all the various good parts of them, like the quality of EcoTech products, which I understand some people debate. I think they're pretty good quality. So the quality of EcoTech and at least the reputation of it, with the capability of Neptune systems, which their stuff is pretty cheaply built, but it is a capable platform to control your aquarium, right? And a very popular one that has a lot of backing in the hobby. So there's a huge community behind it, and I don't blame people for going that route because of all that behind it. But that's what these entities, venture capital groups, this is what they do. They're not reefers. I mean, maybe one of them is, but if he is, I wouldn't necessarily categorize him as a reefer like the rest of us. Those guys have enough money that somebody's taking care of their tank. They're paying little guys to take care of that tank, and they're just enjoying it with an expensive glass of whiskey when they get back from the office. They're on a different level, and I would venture to say it's a safe bet to say that none of these guys are reefers. This whole move is they united all these things, all these entities, all these companies, and they're now, building all these tiers in and inching prices up and bolstering that, grassroots social media wave of influencers, all the wannabe Thomases, getting them, riled into a frenzy. And they're going to have this, big shiny, this big shiny egg that they've, filled full to the brim that they can now, put up for sale. And some bigger, corporation, some bigger conglomerate will come along and snap that up, and those venture capitalists will just count their money. And again, I said it last time, I'm not being the people who just, naysay all of it and, just trash capitalism on a daily basis. I can't stand those people either. They're really annoying. I'm not trying to be some hipster about this and, stick to the man, so to speak. I'm not. But we need to understand what it means when this stuff happens. And instead of the reaction to your own folly being to bury your head in the sand, I think it's a lot, it behooves all of us and improves the hobby and makes the hobby healthier for all of us if the majority of reefers would just accept that, not every aspect of this is good. Sure, there's more capital behind all these groups, and there exists, therefore, the more potential to develop better products, but that's not really coming to fruition. We haven't seen that. In fact, all we've seen is layers being added that, you know, make the hobby more expensive and more inaccessible and, you know, more pay to play. And I just don't think people should have to pay hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars to be able to turn off a pump that's going crazy from where they stand in the grocery store when their wife calls them freaking out. Like, call me crazy. I don't think that that's right. So anyway, again, to the reefers like me who are on the cusp of this perspective or just gaining this perspective, or a couple of years ago where they're just starting to like maybe, you know, maybe sense that a few things might not be quite what they thought they were. Like, this video is really for you guys. I mean, if you stuck with me for, 35 minutes, I so appreciate it, guys. I didn't mean to go this long, but it's a lot to explain. There's a lot of history behind it. If I got any of it wrong, I truly apologize. I wasn't around. I wasn't around in the MXM day or the WXM days. Like, I'm reaching back beyond my knowledge base in the hobby, right? But I'm trying to make this make sense, or at least generate a kernel of doubt in the minds of some people that would otherwise, in pure like self-defense of their own decisions, jump to the defense of these major entities in the hobby that are not necessarily doing things for the common good all the time, like many people make them out to be. So, all right, end rant. I might as well retitle this Reef Rants. I'm sure somebody already has that, you know. I'm not gonna steal somebody's name, but yeah, that's what I have to say about that for now. So, all right, guys, seriously, if you spent this long on this, I so appreciate it. And so appreciate your support and just, you know, you guys taking the time to listen to it and to support me and talking about some of this stuff through, I think, an avenue where it's not as often talked about or fought about like as it is through other mediums like Facebook and Reef to Reef and stuff like that. So I hope it adds something to the conversation, and please talk about it. It's my great joy every week to talk to you guys about it in the comments section and hear your views on it and your perspectives. And I feel like people are so civil on my channel, and I so appreciate that. Like, even, you know, some people, I had a couple of, you know, borderline defenders of, you know, Aperture and stuff like that on previous videos, and, you know, in BRS, and they were so civil about it. And I so appreciate that, because I just feel like there's nothing to be gained by screaming at one another. And that's what Reef to Reef turns into every time. So I'm trying to, you know, bring this conversation to bear through a different medium in making this. So appreciate everything that you guys do for me, seriously. All right, have a good one.